Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to play as the ever so infamous Scum and Zealot. So, I'm going to show you how to get there. You have to just go to basically any of the underground spots, or you can simply just look down where one of them spawns at and press B, which will teleport you directly to them. And they cost 5 amnesites. So you're going to have to work a little bit to get them. There's another way to get down here as well as a parole. You have to have somebody help you get through the gates or maybe acquire a hijacker. But once you get down here, you can find one of these scumbag locations and become a scumbag as a parole without having to die. But in this video, obviously you can tell I'm a skeleton soul-like thing, and I'm just going to become the scumbag now. Nothing but a rebel. I must destroy Cortex infrastructure. I must plan rebellions and fight the Cortex. I must evade public visibility. So as you can see, that big blue skull on the bottom means I immediately have a limit assigned to me. That means anytime I go up to that surface, I will have one of those limit boxes on me, meaning anybody can kill me without any type of repercussion. So you got to be real careful. Make sure you stay with your cult brothers, and just be really careful whenever you go to the surface to reap havoc. Now you can tell I kind of spawned in this really dark area, but luckily you spawn with a couple items that are useful to help you navigate these dark areas. So here's everything you spawn with. A little switchblade and a strange lighter. So I'll show you how to equip them. You just hold down tab, you can click both of them, and as Scum and the Zealot for that matter, you also have a radio to where you can communicate with all your other Scum brothers, and you can mute it if you just hold down tab and click on it. I'm going to leave it on for now, just in case somebody wants to communicate something. But now I'm going to equip my lighter. And you can tell it kind of gives you a little bit of lighting. Now, some of the things you're going to struggle with as a scumbag are finding items you need to craft firearms, because this is going to be one of the main things you're going to have to do in order to actually cause any havoc, unless you're satisfied with just your switchblade. But as I'm sure most of us would much rather have a firearm to actually really do some damage. And especially if you're going to be fighting against the Cortex, as you guys know, are extremely heavily armed and mostly in pretty big numbers. They're almost never running around alone. And if they are running around alone, they're almost immediately calling for reinforcements the moment they get shot at. But the fact that this is true, that they immediately call for reinforcements, leads some very good opportunities to do some bait and switch tactics, tricking them into going one area and then sending your forces out in another area to maybe destroy a neurostabilizer, which I'll show you what that is later with an IED. And yeah, so one of the first things you're going to want to do as a scumbag is just immediately start looking around for items. And I'll show you, you can find items like this. These look like stuff that somebody stored here. So I don't really have any use for these, but you'll find like little stash boxes that are in various locations. I'll let you see what those look like once I find one really quick. So before we get to one of the stash boxes, here is the cult crafting table. This thing allows you to craft all types of stuff, mostly firearms and just stuff for causing damage above. Some of the best stuff here, in my opinion, are the lung puncher, which is... Where's the lung puncher? The lung puncher right here. It's a shotgun that does a lot of damage and has a pretty damn fast fire rate. The IED, which allows you to destroy neurostabilizers. It's basically an explosive. And the Tantalizer is one of my personal favorites. It's kind of like a makeshift AK-47. I don't think it's based off of an AK-47, but it looks very reminiscent of one. Now, in order to craft all these weapons, you're obviously going to have to find these materials, and this is where a lot of scums struggle. Which I highly recommend doing here is obviously some of these items only you will be able to acquire because they're contraband and they can't even be found on the surface. One example within the Tantalizer is old gun parts. Old gun parts can only be found underground. And so what I like to do is obviously look myself to see if I can find these other items. But if I'm really struggling to find something, I'll try to make some type of deal with a prole upstairs, or maybe even tell him if he brings me items I need to craft a firearm, I will also make him a firearm. Because as somebody that's a scumbag and just wants to see the destruction of the city, a prole with a firearm can probably only lead to chaos up above. And personally, I find it hilarious to just think giving one of the lowest ranking citizens in the city one of the most powerful weapons. And just imagining them going and reaping havoc on the Cortex. One other thing I'd like to mention about this is people tend to leave all their extra stuff here, which is kind of a good idea. If there's something you don't think you'll really need and that you know can be used to make something useful, leave it here, because other scumbags or zealots will come here and craft stuff using them. So it's just kind of kind to leave stuff here and just makes it convenient for everybody. Teamwork is very critical as the scumbags and as the cult in general because you are at a huge disadvantage from the moment you literally spawn. So now let's find a cache. Oh, here we go. Here's a suspicious stash. All you gotta do is search it, and you see you can find stuff in it. And really what you want to look for is just items that you want to craft. So right now I'm looking for old gun parts so I can make this tantalizer eventually. But in order to find these stash spots, you're just gonna want to look in the dark areas. And sometimes they're more obvious than others. See old ammo, old ammo. Here's another stash type. They can be on walls. More old ammo. Just want to check behind crates and stuff for these stashes. These stashes can spawn in a lot of different places. Here we go, a stash right here. And there's gunsmithing tools. Now this is a very valuable item. Gunsmithing tools allow any workbench to become a workbench that you can now craft firearms at. This item is very good for selling to people up above, because not only will it allow more firearms to be on the surface, which will only help you spread rot by causing chaos, you can actually sell it for a decent amount of money. People will pay high dollar for this. So if you can maybe make a deal with a dealer, a banker, or a pro, you're in the money. So here's another stash type. It looks like a little pipe. You can search inside of these. This one looks like it's already been raided or just had nothing in it. But yeah, those are also stashes that you can potentially find. Now there's another type that we haven't seen yet that just looks like a little bag or a backpack. If you find a bunch of organs like this, I highly recommend you just keep them because they're hard to come by and they feed you pretty well. And they're really your only source of food in the underground unless you plan on buying food. So just harbor these and, you know, don't be afraid to share them with your fellow scumbags if you need to. I need to find one more old gun part and then I can make a tantalizer. Alright, so I have everything I need to make a tantalizer. I put my machine trinket up there, my 2 pieces of wood. Now I just need to drop my 2 axles and both my old gun parts. And now I should be good to craft it. I just need to make sure these are actually on the table just like how you would craft everything else. And there we go. We now have a tantalizer. It's a fully automatic. It's like an AK-47 almost. Looks pretty sick. And now that we're done crafting, let's talk about the area a little bit that we're in. This area is commonly referred to as the bazaar because it's right next to a place that's called the underground bazaar. There's a locker here, the workbench down below you just saw. There's a sacrificial pit, which we'll talk a little bit more about whenever I play as the Zealot. And there's this here. There's a Cortex armory for any rogues that happen to spawn down here. If you don't know how to play as a rogue, I'll put a tab in the top right corner to show you how. But anyways, a rogue will come up to this and they can access these weapons. A rogue is essentially a Cortex controller that has joined the cult. Kind of an interesting concept. But yeah, let's keep moving on. There's one other area that you should really be aware of up here. So now if you go through here, there's a half decent looting area you can go into.
Awesome.
It's extremely dark over here.
So,
It's kind of like this hub here. This is like an underground train station. I'm not sure if they plan on doing anything with this in the future, but as for right now, it's just kind of like a massive dead end that leads to a train that doesn't really appear to be used. So I'll go down and show you this really quick. You can see there's a lot of trash cans and stuff down here that you can search and find stuff in. But you can see here's the train. Maybe this train will be used in the future for something, but as of right now, it's not. But there is a lot of stuff to loot down here, so keep this area in mind. Alright, we are now back. And now there's an even more important spot you should know about than the looting area. That's over here. Over here, you're able to do some crafting. It's kind of tucked away in the corner, and this light is not always on, so sometimes it's extremely dark back here. As you can see, you have a generator, a spot where you can make axles, a workbench that somebody appears to have put a farm kit on, a farm toolkit, which allows them to make pharmaceuticals. Both of these are contraband, just keep that in mind. So if you do craft these and go up to the surface as somebody that's not a cultist and you get searched, you will get a limit put on you. Anyways, let's continue. There's a foundry here. For those of you that don't know, in order to operate the foundry down here, it's a little different than upstairs. Now, you're still going to have to put coal down here, and I'll show you where you can find the coal. And those metal squares we keep finding, the metal pieces, you put those up here instead of the metal ore you would mine as a parole. So metal squares go up here, coal goes down here, and then it just works like normal. And then you can take those ingots that you'll get, make either plates, or axles with it for firearms. So just know that this area is here. It's very useful for crafting stuff. You're going to need to make guns and various other tools of destruction. So there is one last spot that is kind of useful to know. So for reference, here's the locker. You want to go upstairs one more time. And you want to go into this corner. Sometimes this light's not on, so it's extremely dark, so you'll want your lighter or flashlight. Take a right here, and then you are in the Underground Bazaar. If you're having a hard time finding this, you can also mark it on your map. Underground Bazaar, and there you go. It'll kind of map you to it. There's a bunch of vendors here that you can buy stuff from. Sometimes they sell stuff that's useful, sometimes they don't. It's kind of hard for people to get down here because there's an exit point here that has a gate on it, so as you can tell, people would either need a hijacker or you would have to let them in yourself. All right, so that's basically everything important in this area. We're going to move on to the next area, which isn't all that far away. Here's the crafting table for reference. You're just going to turn left here and go down this little hallway. Out here in this massive dome-shaped room is where you can mine your coal. Now, you'll need a pipe or a pickaxe to do this, but a pipe is the most accessible thing here as a scumbag, so if you want to get coal, here's where you can find it, in this pit. And there is a ladder to get out, so don't worry about getting stuck in there. So just to quickly reiterate about crafting, you have to find the scrap metal by searching stashes, and you have to mine the coal and then take it to that area, the bazaar. And now here's the other side. And most people will refer to this area as catwalk because, well, it has a massive catwalk. There's a couple exit points here. There's one here. There's one there, and there's one there. They're almost all marked with red lights above them, which kind of makes them easy to spot. It's kind of like saying an exit. And you have another ritual pit. And something else that's good to know about, because if your squad of scumbags do not have a corpsman with you, or corpsman, however you want to pronounce it, there's an auto stitcher here. Unfortunately, it looks like ours is empty, but if you guys have a corpsman that's working with you, they can refill it. And now if we just continue on this way, there's another big area over here that is good for looting as well. There's an underground area that's good for looting. There's a biofuel refinery in case when you have to refill one of the generators. All you got to do is put biological waste in this in and use a jerry can to fill up here. So one example of biological waste would be like cancer pods. You can put it in here. You'll hear a little burning sound. Use a jerry can, refill it there, and then take it to any generator you need. Now, everything else down here, kind of empty. There's some loot stashes hidden in here, though. Go up to the top. There's just more area to loot. Nothing really too interesting as of right now. But on the second floor, there's the sanctuary. And what is the sanctuary? It has a locker. It has a radio. And it has a cooking station back here. So the cooking station is probably the most valuable part of this. You won't really find people back here that often because most people hang out in the bazaar in the underground. Just because it has the most like useful stuff around it. So okay, we're going to move on. So now that we're back in the big room, that's the direction to the underground bazaar section. That's the direction to the sanctuary and catwalk section. And then this area is to the hideout. And now down here is where the zealot can spawn, where this massive what appears to be either rock or rot is down here that you guys worship. As you guys can see, here's the cult sign. There's like a pool of blood, and then here's where the zealot is. And then there's like this massive rot that we talked about earlier. And on the other side of this, there's a crafting table and a locker that you can use. So just be aware that these are here if you want to use them. And if you want to spawn as the zealot, here it is. All right, so now I'm playing as a pro, and I just wanted to show you that if you guys store contraband underground in a scum stash, you cannot take it out of a locker. See where it says locker? On the underground, it'll say scum stash. Even though you can see my contraband items in here, if I click them, nothing happens. It says no contraband here. So just keep in mind that if you do put anything in the underground, you can only take it out in the underground. And this is personally why I like to play on two different servers. One server, I'll play as Cult. In the other server, I'll play as Cortex. And so this doesn't really play effect. I can kind of use my locker as much as I want as whatever role I prefer on that server. Obviously, you don't have to do this, but just keep it in mind that if you store contraband down below in a scum locker, you will not be able to take it out from in the surface. And now one other thing a lot of people don't know of is that you can actually drink this blood here. All right, and now that's the basics of navigating the underground and how to loot the underground, you just kind of have to search for stashes until you find what you want, or maybe trade with people on the surface to get what you want. And you want to work with other scumbags and zealots to get what you need. Now, we're going to talk about what you have to do on the surface to cause destruction and how to even cause destruction, and some things you should be looking out for so you don't get yourself killed too easily. Now, in terms of destroying Cortex infrastructure, there's a pretty big list on different things you can destroy. Now, in order to destroy things, you can't use the switchblade. The switchblade just doesn't work. You have to use a pipe, the zealot's axe, or a firearm to shoot it. And those things you can destroy are security cameras, neuroconsoles, neurostabilizers, vending machines, ration distribution stations, pharmacility vending machines, electric panels, civil terminal stations. Now, of these, I personally like to prioritize neurostabilizers and cameras. Neurostabilizers purge the rot that's in the air and slowly tick down the rot. So destroying these will allow rot to accumulate easier and will allow you to quote-unquote win if that's what your objective is. And now for the cameras, they obviously can spot you and give away your position. They have a pretty distinct sound whenever they spot you, so it's hard to miss. And just know that whenever you are spotted by these, all Cortex units get a yellow exclamation point on your position and are told to go sweep that area, so just keep that in mind. Everything else is kind of low priority, but if you had to pick two other things, I would say next on the list would be the civil terminal stations and the ration distribution stations, because people will start to starve because they need money and they need rations to survive, just leading to further chaos and potentially more bodies. And the more people that die, the higher the rot will climb. You just basically want as much decay and destruction in the city as possible to get a higher rot value. So there's only two ways to become a zealot, and for one of them, you have to start out as a scumbag. You'll spawn in as the scumbag, causing you 5 amnesites, and then you can just go to the hideout location where the zealot spawn is, and it costs 15 amnesites, as we talked about earlier. Now, there's another way that could cost you even less amnesites, and you actually don't even have to be a scumbag for it to take place, and that's if you get consecrated by somebody that's already a zealot. Here's an example of it. The darker waters call for you. I must perform sacred rituals. I must gather the faithful. I must spread the rot. Now you guys can see that I am indeed the zealot. And after being consecrated from whatever character I was into the zealot, I get to keep all the items I had. And I also get the added addition of having this ritual axe, which looks really cool. It has the symbol of the cult on it. And it can be used to mine coal even if you wanted to. And it's freaking better than the pipe and the pickaxe. So it's a very good item. And only the zealot can have it. So it's just kind of like a unique item he gets. And so you'll also notice that there's this new symbol on the far left of your screen. That is basically the server's rot meter. The higher up that green gets, the more rot that's taking place in the server. And that number underneath is how much suspicious meat you manage to acquire by harvesting it from corpses. To harvest it from a corpse, you just have to go up to the corpse, melee the corpse until you see the suspicious meat appear and the corpse turn into a skeleton, and then you can just eat it. After eating 5 of those, the number will obviously hit 5, and then you can bring somebody to the ritual pit here and consecrate them if you want, turning them into a zealot. It's a really good idea to constantly be converting people into zealots because zealots have more health than scumbags do. It'll just make you and your cult brothers a more overall effective fighting force, so always consecrate whenever you can. Plus, you get amnesties for it, so why not? And now that we are the zealot, let's actually talk about what the ritual pit does. So you'll see the ritual pit, 0 out of 10 sacrifices completed. 0 were done here. So it says 0 were done here because nobody's been thrown in this pit at all. And you need 10 sacrifices. In other words, you have to throw 10 corpses into this pit. Whenever you do that, a darkness event will happen. And the darkness event, in my opinion, is one of the coolest events in this game. Basically, it turns the world into the purge. Everybody up above don't have to follow any type of rules. Anyone can kill anybody, and it just causes chaos above. And it leaves a very big opportunity for the cult to maybe make some moves up above and cause rot to spread even more. On top of that, it does give a boost to the rot meter too, so it's a good idea to bring corpses down here if you can. What a lot of people like to do is they'll get corpses, bring them down here, harvest them, eat the suspicious meat, and then just throw the corpse right into pit. So you're kind of getting a double purpose off of one corpse. So yeah, basically, as the cult, you're going to want to harvest as many corpses as you can. Now, if you're still a scumbag, in order to get to a zealot, it's a good idea to bring corpses to the zealot, or just the suspicious meat itself. It's really up to you which way you want to do it, or whatever way is easier for you. I'll show you an example of one of my buddies consecrating somebody at this little ritual pit here. It's a pretty funny interaction.
I pitch a 10 when that happens. Oh.
Would you like a reward for your service, your faithful service to the rock?
Yes, sir.
Kneel in front of the shrine.
I have a lung punch.
Exalt this petty heretic and promote him before the gods.
No.
The ritual pit is pleased. The darker waters call for you.
Now, it's always a good idea to ask people if they want to be consecrated, because some people do not want to become a zealot, for whatever reason. I personally always want to become a zealot because I like having more health. So whenever the darkness event takes place, it's pretty obvious, because everything will fall into this deep red color for every single player, regardless of their fate. And whenever this takes place, it says it right here. The darkness has come. All laws are suspended. All citizens are subject to limitation. So if you're not part of the cult, or if you're not part of the Cortex, you better run for cover, because everyone's going to be killing everybody. Just absolute chaos is about to erupt. There's one other rot-related event you should know of, and that's a limitation order, which will be symbolized by this. Limitation orders tend to happen after the rot hits a very high level, but the cult fails to actually reset the server. During this, Cortex members are allowed to freely pass into the underground, so be aware of that. If you're chilling in the underground, be ready for Cortex to potentially come break down your doors. Cortex can also come into the underground during the darkness event too, so watch out for both of these symbols, and if you're chilling underground, be wary that that's something that could take place. Don't get ambushed. Now, how would the cult even reset the server in the first place? What they have to do is get the rot level to 100% and hold it there for a roughly 10 minutes. Then the server will reset, confirming the cult was successful in consuming the world in rot. And what does resetting a world do? It takes away everybody's credits, everybody's amnesites, everyone starts from ground zero again. Complete, fresh reset of the entire server and everything in it, just so we're extra clear. Now, it's important that we know that the purpose of the game is not just to simply try to win, it's to have fun. And if winning is the way that you have fun, obviously try to do that. But if it's not, there's tons of other things you could do as a cult member that's roleplay related, or just antagonizing the Cortex is always a lot of fun too. There's really no right or wrong way to play this game, and in my opinion, that's what makes this game so damn fun. And if you made it this far, guys, I'm going to give you some exclusive information I intentionally held off until the end. The water you can drink in the underground will never give you worms, and the Skull Sterling spikes in price during a darkness event or whenever rot levels are high. So if you buy it whenever rot levels are low, cash it in whenever you notice rot levels are high, and you'll get a pretty big payout for it. And while this is really all the basics you need to know, let's also briefly talk about dealing with sanity while you're in the underground. Now, in the underground, as of right now, there's nothing that can directly deal with sanity besides the fact that there's cigarettes laying everywhere. But more times than not, you'll become addicted to the cigarettes, and that's kind of a pain in the butt to have to deal with. So you'll either have to sneak your way into the nightclub and hang out in there for a minute, or you're just going to have to deal with being insane for a while. But I mean, being a cult member and being insane kind of go hand in hand, so it's kind of fitting to the role, I guess. Anyways, guys, if you made it this far in the video, I greatly appreciate it. I would really appreciate a like. It helps me a lot in the algorithm. And if any of your friends are struggling with Scum, or the cult in general, maybe show them this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace! Oh, hi, fellas! Oh my god, and that's why you gotta watch out for the fucking popo.